The Irish Whale Dolphin Group just published findings of the last 15 years of research on humpback whales in Irish waters. And what we've tried to do is pull together lots of information, a lot of it provided by the public, to try and make sense and understand more about how humpback whales use Irish waters, where they go to and where they've come from.
How has that information been gathered over those 15 years?
Well, this information started actually in 1999, where we got sent a video by a guy who worked on a guard ship around the Kinsale gas rigs, and he was just showing us footage of these humpback whales that were hanging around the gas platform. And it was a digital video, and we managed to grab a little part of the tail fluke as the whale lifted its fluke, because there's unique markings on the underside of a humpback whale. So it's not just a whale, it's an individual whale, which we can recognise. And just by grabbing that video grab from his footage, gave us the first image in what's now the Irish Humpback Whale Catalogue, which now has 32 individual whales that we recognise. And many of these whales we've seen many times. Some we've seen 30 or 40 times over the last 15 years. So it's pulling all that together.
And when you pull all that information together, you're hoping to really understand more about these animals. Yet there are still mysteries within it, despite this body of evidence.
Well, when we started seeing humpback whales, we were so excited. We couldn't believe humpback whales in Irish waters. And these are very close to shore, and often you can see them from land. So you're thinking, wow, this is a rare event. This is really exciting. And then you see it again. And then you see it the same time as you did last year. And then the next year. And you suddenly think, gosh, this isn't rare. This is regularly occurring. You know, there's only one or two of them. And then we see more of them. And then we build up the catalogue. So what we've realised now is that we are very lucky to have humpback whales that come to Irish waters around the same time of year, each year, often in the same places and often the same individuals. And they're spending many months in Ireland before they go somewhere else. So it's not a rare thing, it's a regular thing. So you ask yourself, well, okay, they might be here for a few months, but where do they come from? And where do they go when they leave? So by plugging in the photographs that we might have got from a member of the public, we take those images and we share them with our colleagues. And there's a company in the States, Allied Whale, that do the matching. And they've got something like 6,000 individual whales now are in their catalogue. So we send them images and we say, have you seen this whale somewhere else in the North Atlantic? And every image we've sent them from Ireland, they'd never seen it anywhere else before. Up to, it was actually 2 years ago where a whale that was photographed off West Cork had been seen a few months earlier in the Netherlands. And they saw the image on our website and said, geez, I recognise that whale. And it had been seen in the Netherlands a few months earlier. We didn't see it in West Cork again that summer, but then a few months later, it was seen back in the Netherlands. We're thinking, like, humpback whales are going between Ireland and the Netherlands. And then a few years later, the same whale is now being seen in Tromsø in Norway, and it's being seen regularly up there. So when we saw it in Ireland, we thought it was quite a small whale, and maybe it's grown and now maybe it's hanging out off Norway. And as soon as we had that match, which was our first match after 10 or 15 years of work, literally a few weeks later, we got a call from colleagues in Iceland who said, the whale that you just photographed off West Kerry, we saw that whale something like 40 days previously off Iceland. So now we're getting the first evidence of whales from Ireland moving north into the higher latitude kind of feeding grounds, which is kind of what we'd expect. But the next big question is, where do they come from when they came to Ireland? Where do they breed? Where are the breeding grounds of humpback whales that occur in Ireland? Because they're not breeding in Ireland, they're feeding. So that's a massive question, where do these whales breed? And it's a question we still haven't managed to answer.
So how do you go about perhaps trying to answer that question? Because it is intriguing. There is a mystery about what happens to these whales when they presumably depart Irish coastal waters.
There's a lot of work on humpback whales. You know, they are a fantastic creature. They're relatively easy to study because they occur close to land. They've got these unique tail markings. They've been overhunted, so there's a good conservation interest. So most of the whales that are photographed in and around the high latitudes, Iceland, Norway, places like that, Greenland, they are photographed again on the breeding grounds in the Caribbean. So they're Caribbean breeding whales that are moving up the Atlantic, up into the high latitudes. But there's another breeding ground off West Africa, Cape Verde, which was decimated in the 1700s by the whaling ships. And that population hasn't really increased. So I kind of think, I've always thought that it's more likely that the source of Irish humpback whales is West Africa rather than the Caribbean. So it's over 10 years ago now that the Whale and Dolphin Group launched the first Irish humpback whale expedition, and we sailed down to Cape Verde. It was about 4,000 miles, so it's a long way, to try and see if we could find whales that we'd seen in Ireland, could we find them in Cape Verde? Now Cape Verde is a very hard place to work and no one goes there for that reason. And there wasn't many photographs taken from Cape Verde, so the catalogue was quite small. So we didn't find any. We photographed whales in Cape Verde and we matched them. We looked to see if they were Irish whales and we didn't find any. We went back in 2006, did the same again, didn't find any of the Irish whales, but we found humpback whales. We went back in 2010, 2011, and still didn't find any whales. We found whales that we'd seen previously in Cape Verde, and we found whales that had been seen in the Azores, in Iceland, in Norway, places like that, but not the Irish ones. Now, it is a bit of a needle in a haystack. You know, you're talking, you know, not many whales to be photographed in Ireland and a small catalogue to compare in, say, Cape Verde. So I'm criticised, people say, well, Simon, you failed to find the Irish humpback breeding grounds. And I'm saying, no, I haven't failed yet, because all the evidence we've gathered so far suggests to me that we haven't discounted West Africa. We have discounted the Caribbean. They're not Caribbean whales. So they could be West African whales, or they could be from a third breeding population, which we haven't discovered yet. And I look at a reference from a Norwegian from 1929, and he speculates, he says, based on the catch records from the whaling vessels, it's possible that there's a breeding ground for humpback whales to the south of Ireland. He doesn't say how far to the south of Ireland. He just says to the south of Ireland. This was a guy that's, you know, people respected his opinion. So maybe there's another breeding ground which we haven't discovered, and that's where the Irish humpbacks go.